with National Network View News. On tonight's show, Charlene Muhammad will discuss the silencing of voices who have dissenting views on the experimental COVID-19 vaccines. Later, Dr. Akili will update us on the new strain of the COVID virus and the new wave of infections. Joining us later in the broadcast is Netfa Freeman of the Black Alliance for Peace, who will be discussing the protests in Haiti, the United States, the UN and OAS interventionism, as well as AFRICOM. Before we delve into the top news, let's do a recap of the events we've covered this week. The Nubian Leadership Circle held its all-virtual National Black Leadership Summit 2 on April 3rd, 2021. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke during the virtual event about building our own society.
I'm very honored to be with you once again, pursuing the creation of our own Black nation. That's a noble objective that is exactly what God wants us to do. We have become a nation within a nation. But as a nation within a nation, we have numbers. We get out of this economy $1.2 or $3 trillion a year. But we don't have earth that we can call our own. So pursuing the creation of our own Black nation starts with a vision. What do we have in our heads and in our hearts?
On yesterday's show, Dr. Abdul-Halim Muhammad and Dr. Asad El-Malik discussed the Derek Chauvin murder trial, post-traumatic slave syndrome, and the lack of intervention to prevent his murder.
If Derek Chauvin is found guilty or he's found innocent, from your perspective, what would be the impact of the verdict? If he's found guilty, how would that impact Black America? And what would probably be Black America's response? And if he's found innocent, how would that impact Black America?
I think obviously a guilty verdict will serve the benefits of justice, and we'll be able to say that justice was achieved and delivered in that case. However, I'm not expecting a guilty verdict. I'm expecting either a hung jury or acquittal. And I'm sure that we remember this, the summer activities of the protest. I'm sure we'll see a lot of protest. I'm sure we'll see a lot of lofty speeches from politicians and different members of our community. But maybe I'm cynical, but I don't believe anything will change in our psyche, nor will it change in theirs.
Dr. Abdul-Halim Muhammad and Dr. Asad El-Malik also discussed the music industry's controversial music content and the merchandising of industry artists that has been going on for decades.
Candace Owens, and people agree with her, disagree with her, but one of the things that she said was that online to Lil Nas X was that he was being used by these corporations and these big execs to basically destroy the minds of children. Was she right in that assessment, or is she off basis?
Well, Black masculinity has been under attack since our feet hit the shores of North America, with buck breaking, lynching, police brutality, the propaganda in the media that makes us look like a beast. When you look at the Birth of a Nation movie by D.W. Griffith, that we're incompetent, we're incapable, we're unqualified to hold public office, and all we want to do is sleep with a white woman. And all of this, and then we look at the mass incarceration. We're people, especially Black men, that are endangered species. So so you can again go and look at just the whole atmosphere environment that's being created now about that we are the source of anti-Semitism, we're the source of misogyny, we're the source of anti-Asian hate, we're the source of of all of the evils that embody America. But you know something? If you lift our tag in the back of our shirt, it won't say made in China. It'll say made in the USA.
Evanston, Illinois reparation plan provides some Black residents that were victims of discriminatory housing redlining with reparation payments.
Is it a mere symbolic gesture, or is this a good first step?
It's a step. I don't know if it's good, and I don't know if it's a first step. But if it involves land, now you got my attention as an urban planner. You have my attention. Because without land, this whole thing is about property. It's about land. Remember the 39 men, actually 40 signatures on the Constitution, but the 39 men that signed the Constitution of the United States, they were white male property owners. And they didn't even want white men that didn't own property to vote. It's about land. So we got to have land in order to feed, clothe, and shelter ourselves. It's a good start, but it doesn't end there. You can give somebody money, but if you don't educate them with the knowledge of self to do for self, then that land can be taken from them. That money can be taken from them. And if you give them land to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves, you got to give them the tools and implements and materials necessary to sustain themselves. And you do have to provide a measure of capital so that they're able to continue and perpetuate what it is that they're doing. So land, education, tools, equipment, material, and capital. But really, we need more. We need like 100 million acres just to start.
Sister Charlene Muhammad, inspirational fashion designer and founder of Al Nisa Designs, Modest Style, MGT apparel, has garnered international acclaim and awards during Torino Fashion Week.
How examples of how you have seen the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan be an advocate for the rights of women?
Every time he does a lecture and he is focusing on the value of the woman, the value of the mother, the value of the daughter, the beauty of the woman, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan does nothing but lift the woman up and inspires us to be women of God. Everything that he does is to build a better life for us. He understands who we are. He understands that we are that second self of God. And he tries every time he speaks to us to let us know that his love for us is so pure and so real, and that he is the protector over us. And he will continue to do that because he is constantly exalting the women.
Student Minister Donald Muhammad discussed the growing dissatisfaction with the U.S. government and their ongoing actions to affect voter participation.
How would you characterize the current racial atmosphere and political climate in the United States?
Well, you can always determine based on the progress of Black people. There has always tried to hold us back. Go all the way back to Black Wall Street in Tulsa. Go all the way back to changing. They are doing this in 43 states all over the United States right now, even in the Missouri. Missouri is what they call a red state. So therefore, they have changed a lot of the voter laws here as well. Also, in the city of St. Louis, they had a proposition called Prop D that took away the partisan political voting elections, and then they are nonpartisan now. So now there's a runoff. Even when two people win, the first two that wins in a primary has to do a runoff now. All of this is designed to stop Black rule, my brother.
NNV contributor Charles Muhammad discussed the science of fasting, describing its benefits to cleanse the body of impurities, lower blood sugar, and improve overall health.
So what are some other benefits, besides curing sickness and obviously weight loss?
Well, there's another saying that if you free the mind, the body will follow. So when you fast, you're basically renewing your cellular structure of your body, and you're cleaning the body. And also, you are allowing one of the most important organs in your body to do its job. That's the liver. And the liver begins a process called ketosis. Now, ketosis is when your body begins to take out the fats of the body and then bring it into the liver, and the liver turns it into what are called ketones. And then the ketones are like straight wide up to your brain. It's like fuel for the brain. And we as Muslim followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we go through that process when we go fast during Ramadan, when we don't eat during the sunlight.
Tequila Muhammad gave us tips on food storage, disaster preparedness, and having an emergency evacuation plan in place for ourselves and our families.
So what should we have in a disaster preparedness plan that helps us in the event of evacuation?
Yes, sir. First and foremost, we all should have our go bags with us. A go bag is a bag that you basically put together for you and your family, each member of the family of your household, where you have enough items to last you for a bare minimum of 3 days, which includes food, clothing, some type of shelter that you're able to put on your back comfortably and be able to walk for long distance or periods of time. You also want to have those same storage containers in your car or at your workplace, as well as your children's schools if they're in school. And you want to make sure that you are preparing your family by having those evacuations, practicing without utilities to know how to cook or how to be able to survive without having heat, without having food, without being able to cook your food, and just practice with your family. Maybe do a camping thing where you all are turning your lights off and turning off the electricity just for that day to see how you all cope and survive during that time, as well as walking long periods of time with your backpack on to see how far off your family can make it during any disaster. So the biggest thing is properly preparing before the disaster strikes.
Abdul Haq updated us on the Newark Peace Agreement and the people standing together in solidarity against senseless violence and our open enemy.
It's a combination of several factors that's now encouraging our people to do more as it relates to being more actively involved, as it relates to not just my community, but our community. One of the major problems that we as a people face in our community is bystander apathy. It's called bystander apathy. When you see someone doing something, you feel since they have it, you don't have to participate. But I can see that North is inhaling the spirit of unity and cooperation and community, real community, not just the word, but community in practice. And we are implementing and instituting the principles that we have been given from giants like Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So the teachings have always been here, but now it's time that we implement these teachings and all that they have given us. So I'm humbled and I'm honored to be a part of such a great initiative that's not just happening in the North, but in urban cities all throughout America. So all praise is due to Allah.
Tay Uhuru explained Africa is safer than America when it comes to living.
As far as my travels around the world, I haven't had any horror stories. A lot of countries are a lot safer than the United States, including Africa. They have dozens of countries that have lower crime rates, lower gun violence, less mass shootings, and of course, less racism. So when I'm in Africa, I tend to feel stress-free. I tend to feel welcome. To narrow it down to one African country, that's almost impossible. But I will say, a place like Egypt, where we learn about ancient African history, 5,000, 10,000 years ago, the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens, the pyramids of Giza, the Step Pyramid. These places show us how great we were before slavery. And that's a feeling that I think all African Americans should have. And, also Ghana, I would give it up to Ghana because a lot of us are still looking for closure and reconnection in terms of the transatlantic slave trade, so we can see what our ancestors went through. We can enter the door of no return. We can visit the slave dungeons, the slave ports, and we can also learn about the reconnection and the offerings that places like Ghana have made to us as far as land, as far as citizenship, as far as asking for forgiveness.
Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, Final Call national correspondent Sister Charlene Muhammad will join us to talk about the experimental COVID vaccine. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
This is Sister Sajida Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajida House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajidahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Voices of those who refuse to accept the government's line about the experimental COVID-19 vaccines are being silenced on social media news platforms.
Our brother Reza Islam have been banned from Instagram. They have terminated his Instagram. They have paused his Twitter and his Facebook. Now there's two articles that has been written by the ADL list. So he's now on the ADL radar. So he has been mentioned on the Daily Mail. As you can see on the screen, it says disinformation dozen. 2/3 of anti-vax content circulating on Facebook and Twitter can be traced back to 12 people, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Brother Reza Islam is definitely on that list. Anti-vaxxer campaigners who have promoted the conspiracy theory that Bill Gates plans to inject humans with microchips in COVID vaccines were also on that list. Mass skeptic, physician Sherry Tenpenny, and conspiracy theorist and influencer Reza Islam also featured on the list.
Joining us to discuss this is Sister Charlene Muhammad. Greetings.
How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
All across the nation, from frontline health workers to military personnel, people have expressed reservations and have rejected taking COVID-19 vaccines. Why doesn't the news media let you hear about that?
Well, the news media, dear sister, is part of the federal government's massive, aggressive, unrelenting campaign to keep Black and brown people from the truth. In a recent dialogue with his national spokesperson, student minister Ava Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan stated these words, and I want to quote him perfectly, okay? These are wicked scientists interfering with who and what we are in opposition to our coming back into rulership. This is the satanic mind. They seek to make us other than ourselves in a permanent way, unquote. I encourage you and the viewers to read her part 1 and 2 series in the Final Call newspaper, the COVID-19 vaccine and U.S. policy of depopulation at finalcall.com.
Yes, ma'am. Now, why are the voices of dissenters rarely allowed to be heard, but pro-vaccinators can make outlandish claims such as it has a 95% effectiveness rate, etc.?
again, it is part of this U.S. policy of depopulation, and this is running rampant over any voice that would raise concern about some of the vaccine-related injuries, things that are happening to people since they have taken the vaccine. The vaccine, or I would say the experimental vaccine, because it has not been approved by the FDA yet. It has an emergency use authorization. But this is a plan, this is a scheme, and again, it is a plot toward depopulation. So anything outside of that is squashed, including calling those who are spreading the truth conspiracy theorists, which Brother Reza Islam is not.
It's not.
And also putting forth lies themselves. Remember, this is a military operation, as student minister Dr. Wesley Muhammad points out in tons of research, which he can back up and prove. And also the vaccine, or the experimental vaccine, is being held as the solution. And you see people saying, oh, I'm able to go out now, I'm having brunch now, I'm doing different things, I don't have on a mask, I'm not social distancing. And this is just untrue. The vaccine that was approved for emergency use, at the time, both companies, Pfizer and Moderna, put in their releases that people were protected for up to about 2 months. And that was a small population, right? And now, 5 days ago, a report comes out that Pfizer said the efficacy and safety rate is up to 6 months, but they do not protect you from getting or transmitting the virus.
Right. Now, in your Final Call News article, you wrote about the federal government's influence on social media and corporate-owned mainstream media, and said that it's targeted public platforms of those who express a different view. Can you give us an example of a platform that has been shut down for voicing dissent?
Well, yeah, number one, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Facebook and Instagram. Twitter had even shut him down before. It ultimately shut him down, but prior to, it was stripping him of followers, losing his tweets. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, social media director, Brother Dr.Akili Muhammad, told me for the Final Call that those who were posting the minister's July 4th criterion message, the criterion, they were simultaneously being taken down. Brother Dr.Akili had over 70,000 subscribers and over, let's see, I think it's 14 million views. Those were taken down, and he was ultimately stripped from YouTube. Of course, as Brother Ben X said in our clip review here, Reza Islam on a list that was a top 10. He was number 10. Attorney Robert F. Kennedy Jr. of Children's Health Defense was number 1. And now they've expanded the list to 12. There's a center that is targeting our brother and others and saying that they are spreading misinformation, but it is the liar who is dubbing our people as a lie.
Now, would you say that the government and the media are waging an attack on constitutional rights and freedoms of speech?
Well, yes, I will say what Attorney Robert F. Kennedy, who is the chair and he's the chief legal counsel for Children's Health Defense, has told me, as well as the chief another counsel with his organization, that this is definitely attack on freedom of speech. And once that's gone, then all of the other rights are stripped away. But how can you say that people who are voicing concerns, they say, critics argue, about what's injuring people? How can you say that they have no right to say that and shut out those voices? The ultimate end is, again, depopulation.
Right. Voices of those who refuse to accept the government's line about the safety and the efficacy of the experimental COVID-19 vaccines are being silenced, as we discussed, on social media and news platforms.
Yeah.
What type of effect will silencing those who raise legitimate questions and concerns for the safety and the efficacy of the vaccines have on the population's health?
You know, sister, ultimately, when there is a option of life or death in front of you, and those who are calling you to life, as is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, shunned out, then ultimately on health, there's going to be a demise. Our people will continue to take the vaccine. They will continue to say, I've gotten the shot, I feel great, and they will not get the understanding and the information of what this experimental vaccine does and when 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, people will start to, according to international scientists who have studied mRNA, this messenger RNA, they will start to show signs of different cancers and tumors. And these doctors and scientists are worried because they said, we don't know what this impact will have. This is a technology that, as Moderna says, is an operating system. And ultimately, it's death, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in the criterion. And we're seeing that play out right now on the VAERS site, with the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting site run by the federal government, the CDC, and the FDA. People, not just individuals, but nurses, doctors, people who are able to report from the healthcare department, and just regular citizens who have taken drugs or vaccines, they're able to report what's happening to them, and the reports are coming in, and it's a fraction. So ultimately, upon health, it's death.
It's death. Now, you mentioned the criterion. Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has been extremely outspoken as an opponent of the experimental COVID-19 vaccines, and he's warned Black and Indigenous peoples not to take this vaccine in his criterion message. Has the criterion message been removed from all social media platforms?
You know, it has not been removed from all platforms. Some people still have the message up. We still have snippets of it on YouTube. And thank you, Brother Dr.Akili Muhammad, for your commitment, your dedicated work, and your life's work of making sure that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's message gets out. And also NOI.org. But beware, sometimes when you put it up, you get snatched down. I posted on Liberated Sisters, my own show sometimes, and it's taken down or the show is frozen. But whatever we do, find it and spread it.
Now, before we go to break, I want to ask you, you've written an article just recently that came out in the Final Call newspaper entitled "The Fear of Blood Clots, Other Problems, and the Experimental Vaccines." Can you talk to us about that article?
Sure. Thank you, sister. Briefly, this article yet again proves what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says about this experimental shot and how it is death. This talks about the different countries across European nations that have suspended the use of AstraZeneca. They have since said, not they have said, but the European Union has since, the regulators have since recommended that countries use them again. But even in America, Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health has said, America, maybe we don't need AstraZeneca's vaccine because we have enough with Pfizer and Moderna. But the reality is this AstraZeneca is causing blood clots, according to what's being reported. One man has reported his flesh falling off, webs and red rashes everywhere, sort of like a type of, it looks like a type of radiation explosion effect. But you also have people in the States, such as one doctor who developed a rare blood clot and others. And so this is from not only AstraZeneca, but Johnson & Johnson, and more adverse events are being reported since people have taken the vaccine. This one man with the flesh-eating result, his doctors were the only ones that I heard, not to say it hasn't happened, but they're the only ones I saw or heard reported that they believe it is linked to the vaccine. Everything beyond that is dismissing the vaccine as a factor.
Thank you so much, Sister Charlene, for joining us today and for adding your insightful information to this discussion.
Thank you for having me. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. NNV Weekly contributor Dr.Akili Muhammad will join us to give us more information on the experimental COVID vaccine. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. As we renovate and restore the former home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have recycled the old copper gutters and downspouts and created a 1-ounce 39mm coin made of 100% pure copper. Each coin is professionally graded and has its own barcode and registration number. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
As the new strain of the COVID virus circulates and a new wave of infection rises across the U.S., emphasis is on the following social distancing protocols and masking.
Virus variants are circulating across the country as pandemic restrictions continue to relax. In at least 13 states, infections are actually increasing, raising concerns about another possible wave. Here in California, the downward trend continues, but there is some concerns about the variant first found in the Golden State. It's now the dominant strain here.
It's increasing in prevalence from about 5% in December to about 50%, and probably even more right now in Bay Area counties.
Researchers are still trying to see if this variant may be more resistant against COVID-19 treatments and vaccines. And tonight, UCSF epidemiologist Dr. Monica Gandhi says there are plenty of reasons to be hopeful. She's studying the effective vaccination programs in the UK and Israel.
They're seeing massive decreases in cases and hospitalizations.
In some lab tests, the California variant looks resistant. Antibodies triggered by the shots sometimes don't hold up well.
Joining us to discuss is this week's contributor, Dr. Akili. Greetings, Dr. Akili.
How are you, my sister?
I'm great, thank you. What has your research of this vaccine led you to conclude so far?
Well, public statements like that lady that we just heard are really, to me, statements that don't really have merit. Because for somebody to say that the vaccine is the reason why numbers are going down in the UK, there is no evidence that can purport her claim. There was a downturn in most areas of the world outside of the United States before vaccines became available. The United States was really one of the few countries that were still on a high rise of the numbers. So to say that vaccines have caused a lower infection rate, I think is probably a little bordering on not telling the truth from my experience and research.
Right. Now, speaking of research, there's a lot of information out there, and there are a lot of different people and sources speaking on this subject. What research have you done to be educated about the current COVID vaccines? Yeah,
that's an excellent question. So the first thing that I did was, of course, tapped into my research of older vaccines, the historical view of vaccines. And then when you take that and you compare it to what is happening in this mRNA vaccine, of course, it makes it obvious that this is such a new technology. A technology has failed on multiple occasions of infections in the past, but mostly it was sitting and spending a whole day with the Pfizer, the Moderna, and the AstraZeneca on the FDA website, listening to the different doctors and so-called experts around the world have their conversations on whether they thought it should be passed in an emergency use authorization or whether it shouldn't. And then during those days, I don't remember hearing one doctor nor so-called expert from anywhere in the world say that they were satisfied with the safety profile of any of these vaccines. And so that is one of the things that I love to say in public, is that if the FDA is supposed to be the organization, the organizational arm of this government that's supposed to approve vaccines, and the people that they reach out to supposedly be the gatekeepers are not impressed by the safety, then why are there so many Black doctors and doctors in general purporting to the Black community that we should take this vaccine because it's safe?
Response to these Black physicians who are promoting these vaccines as safe to the Black community?
Well, I would really say to them, for instance, the Black Doctors Coalition Against COVID, they have a website, and they are saying that they're being forthright. They are saying that if they are found to be wrong, that they should be held accountable. I think every Black doctor, every Black person, every athlete, every so-called star, whatever these people are that are coming out and promoting for Black people to take this vaccine, should be ready to be accountable. Because what we do know is that, number one, it is investigational. Number two, this should represent and should register in Black people's minds, as many other things have happened in our history, that this is an experiment. Number three, if we look at many examples in our history, we're talking about the Kerner Commission that the government put in place to evaluate Black people's existence in this country. We look at the reality after the riots after Martin Luther King was killed. We look at the riots prior to Martin Luther King being killed. And when the government has these so-called independent people do research on why, it has always been lack of jobs, lack of resources, lack of proper housing, lack of things that Black people need in order to be self-sufficient or just to be able to exist normally in the society. And here it is in 2021, after all this historical research that this country has not given much of a care about our condition nor improving it. In 2021, for us as people to believe that after all these years of injustice, inequality, and outright murder of us in all different aspects of society, for us to think now that somebody is going to be benevolent in the name of giving us a shot that's going to help us through a pandemic, I think is rather naive to say the least, but definitely criminal if these people know that they are not telling the people the truth.
Agreed. What suggestions would you make to those who are weary about taking the vaccine?
Well, I would say that, the first thing that we should do is tap into what you say your faith is. If you say you believe in God, how can you come to a conclusion that a man in a laboratory can produce a substance to put in your arm or in a child to put in their leg that's going to help benefit something that God made? I don't believe men, women, people can produce anything better than what God produced. And so that would be my first thing, is to get your mind in the right place and say, I believe in God. Well, if you do believe that, then he put fruits, vegetables, exercise, sunshine, navy beans, the type of foods that benefit our system to make it the maximum of what it can be. And then keeping your mind clear and correct and keeping from being so full of fear I would say that the majority of physicians that I know who have taken the shot, and the majority of people that I know personally who have taken a shot, have made a decision out of fear. And so I would, again, question people, when have you in your lifetime made a decision? And I don't mean like, let's say a woman or a man is in a position where they're trying to save their child, and in fear, they do something that just seems astronomical. I'm not talking about that situation, but I'm talking about having the ability to get information, having the ability to use discernment, and you still make a decision based in fear. Usually the outcome is not going to be good.
Now, previously you spoke to us about people with diabetes or predisposed to diabetes and the effects of potential effects of the vaccine. What would you suggest to those who don't have any pre-existing conditions and do not desire to take the vaccine, or to those who have taken maybe one shot and fear getting the second?
Yeah, I mean, it goes right back to my last answer. I mean, you know, tap into what you believe in the God that you serve, whatever his name is, still the same God. We all are trusting in the same God, but whatever name you use, maybe go to the scriptures and see what those scriptures tell you to do in a time of fear. Go to those scriptures and maybe tap into what are the foods that are suggested by those particular scriptures. And then there's generally information in public. There are things that we know we should be doing. We know we should be drinking more water. We know we should be exercising. We know that sunshine does a wonderful job to boost the immune system from the perspective of vitamin D and then other ways. You know, it's amazing that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said a few months ago that there are billions of vitamins that come when you're out in the sun and you spend time in the sun and you bathe in the sun. And then when there's a time of need, these vitamins activate themselves. And I'm sure there are people that would say, what kind of education has he had to be able to make that claim? Well, his education, in my personal viewpoint, is superior than the stuff we learn in medical school and colleges, because it has proved that over time. And as well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his book, How to Eat to Live, proved to be superior than the information that I studied in college and I studied in medical school. So that's the foundation of why I would say that statement. So I'm saying that these men who say they're getting their information from God, I think it will be a good idea for us to tap into How to Eat to Live. And at the top of that book, it says, from God in person, Master Father Muhammad. Should be a pretty interesting statement to us. But the foods that are in this book and the suggestions that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad makes in this book, I have seen help people improve themselves, fight disease and win, prevent disease. And so in this day and time, I don't think that there's anything that has proven to be more substantial in these days and times than that book. And so that would be my suggestion to anybody who is trying to do it a natural way and not lean on medications and vaccines.
Right. And thank you for that, Dr. Akili. Now, very quickly, we have another break coming, but I want to ask you, there's a portion of the population that is normally forgotten about, and that is the homeless. These vaccine, campaigns are targeted at those of us who have a lot of creature comforts. That group, the homeless, seems not to be affected as much as, I guess, the rest of the population. Is that true? And why do you think that is?
You know, it's amazing that you mentioned that. I mentioned that to my wife not too long ago. We were driving down the street.
Okay.
And, you know, when you live in certain parts of the community and you drive on certain areas on a regular basis, you tend to get to know these faces. And I told her, I said, man, I'm seeing these same people
right.
That we've been seeing for years. They're not dying. So, hell, maybe we should try what they're doing. But in all honesty, I think part of it may be that they're not around other people. And I don't mean not other homeless people, but I mean not interacting with large aspects of society. The other thing is that many of them are in sunshine for long periods of time because, you know, during the day, unless they're under things, they don't necessarily have the capacity to keep themselves from being touched by the sun, right? And the other thing that I can't say for sure with all of them, but the homeless people that I have worked with over the years, sometimes go long periods of time in between meals. And we know that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that fasting is a cure for 90% of our ills. So I would say that those things will be what I would guess. I can't say, I haven't done any research, but just off the top of my head, those would be things that I would kind of lean on at first that potentially could make them a little stronger against the virus, even though they're probably not in the best health that they probably could be.
Right. And thank you. I would agree. Thank you, Dr. Akili, for joining us. Let's pause for a break from our sponsors. Afterward, Netfa Freeman of the Black Alliance for Peace will inform us about the protests currently happening in Haiti. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds. Online education. Helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848. This week's headline for the Final Call cover story is entitled, Under the Shadow of Death. The trial of Derek Chauvin, the ex-police officer and accused murder of George Floyd, has begun, giving exposure to grief, loss, and the terror Black people continue to suffer with no guarantee of justice. This FCM Volume Number 27 edition features the middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the message to the Nubian Leadership Circle entitled, Building a Nation of Our Own. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call Cover Report.
The U.S. UN Organization of American States, OAS, and white supremacist Western powers have begun to engage in interventionism and colonialism in Haiti.
One of the main calls from the mobilizations of hundreds of the thousands in the streets of Port-au-Prince and across Haiti has been for the United States, United Nations, and the Organization of American States to stop their interference. These bodies, as part of the core group of imperialist nations and institutions targeting Haiti, are currently pushing a rewrite of the Haitian Constitution through a referendum on April 25. These organizations have a long history of neo-colonial intervention in Haiti and the region. Ever since the democratically elected president Jean-Bertrand Aristide was overthrown for a second time by a U.S.-sponsored coup in 2004, Haiti has been occupied by a United Nations force that, at its height, deployed 14,000 troops and personnel. This occupation has changed from over the years, from MINUSTAH to BINA, but it is ongoing. The U.S. government has consistently stood as a barrier to popular democracy in the Americas.
Joining us is Netfa Freeman with the Black Alliance for Peace. Greetings. There you go. I can hear you now.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. The Black Alliance for Peace member, Dr. Jemima Pierre, who is Haitian-born and is an associate professor of Black Studies at the University of California, Los Angeles, has said the Haitian people's right to national sovereignty must be respected. Is the Haitian president, Jovenel Moise's refusal to step down disrespecting the Haitian people's right to sovereignty?
Well, I mean, absolutely it is. There's thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in the street protesting Jovenel Moise. And so whenever the people
aren't able to exercise and have what they want in terms of leadership, in terms of government, in terms of policies, then that means that they don't have any sovereignty. Not to mention the fact that the Jovenel Moïse represents the interests of the West. He is a like the person before him, Michel Martelly. They have been handpicked by the United States, by the U.S. pretty much, but all the Western powers, and so without, as long as the people can't get their choice in terms of being exercise democratic rights to voting on people, representatives, and policies, then that's a breach of the sovereignty of the people.
Now, Haiti, as you mentioned, the previous president, Haiti has had some history of some tumultuous times. Has Moïse's actions sparked the protests in Haiti?
I would say that Moïse, well, you could say his actions, but not just the recent actions of disregarding the Constitution. Right now he's disregarded the Constitution and is ruling by decree. And that's what a lot of people are upset about. But we have to be mindful that this is more like a culmination, a climax, or buildup of the constant manipulation of Haiti politics, the constant repression that comes from, like the clip you played, the repression from United Nations forces and U.S. trained supported police. The people in Haiti have been protesting Moïse back in 2011. When before he even came to power, they were against him, and also even during the time of their ALBA countries, the Latin American Bolivarian, the Alternative for America, that was led by Venezuela, where they actually had a program called PetroCaribe, which was providing alternative, like low cost heating, oil, and everything to the different Caribbean countries. Haiti was one of the recipients of that, and they actually robbed the coffers. I keep saying Martelly, the previous president, but the Jovenel Moïse and others robbed the coffers of the reserves for that, and also abandoned or jettisoned the PetroCaribe program from Haiti. And so people were protesting that. They were upset about that because it obviously affected mostly the poor people. And I've lost my train of thought in terms of your question was.
And that's fine. It was whether or not Moïse's specific actions really sparked.
Right. So this is a culmination of things. And right now, people are also very much against the constant interference by the United States and other Western powers, which are really what's pulling the strings here. I mean, I don't want to go too long, but we have this, the media has this way of making us focus on the quote unquote black despot or the dictator and whatnot, and with to the neglect of looking at the white supremacy and European capitalist interests that are dominating these countries, that are pulling the strings and trying to ensure their interest in the country. And so people are aware of that right now in Haiti, in more of an acute way than they've ever been before. And so the United States is trying to navigate and manage this situation.
And you just made a good point. Haiti is the first Black republic in the Americas to successfully fight against the U.S. and other white supremacist Western powers. Has the U.S. recolonized Haiti by keeping right-wing regimes in the office?
This is absolutely what we refer to as neocolonialism. Supposedly all the trappings of outward trappings and view of independence, but really everything being controlled by the outside. This has been a long time. I want to add an actual fact also to the first one that you mentioned, it being the first Black republic to stand. It's actually the first democracy period in the world. And people don't think about that because we get all this propaganda the United States but actually, the United States had slavery when Haiti, 1804, revolution was able to establish a democracy. So it's actually the first democracy period. A Black nation was the first. But then to go back to your question, is that right now Haiti is controlled by what's called the core group, known as the core group, and it's run by France, the U.S., Germany, the OAS, representatives from these countries, the United Nations, and they're actually pulling all the strings in Haiti and determining what's going on there.
So are these protests just protesting President Moïse alone, or are the protesters going against the U.S., the UN, and OAS?
they're definitely going against this. The signs in the street, the chants in the street are all talking about U.S. imperialism, get out, U.S. get out. All kind of those are. It's definitely decidedly against imperialism.
Now, with U.S.'s interests over there, has the U.S. or other foreign entities been training the Haitian police and its security forces?
Yeah, this has been going on for quite some time now. People may remember the Papa Doc, Francois Duvalier, which was known as Papa Doc, and the son after him. They used to have what was pretty much a death squad thing called Tonton Makouche. It's pretty, and so after that, they've actually refashioned or reformed these elements, and they're actually taking some of the equipment that's left behind, a reduced UN occupation presence, and then right now they've reestablished Jovenel a sort of like a new, what they call some kind of, I can't remember the name of it, intelligence police force that's immune from being prosecuted by, statutorily immune from being prosecuted by for any transgressions or anything like that. And so, yes, and the U.S. has been training these forces. The U.S. and other Western, mostly the U.S. have been training police and military, and they've brought back the military under a lot of the direction and advisement consultation of the United States.
Okay. And finally, the Black Alliance for Peace has spoken out on an array of issues such as ending the brutal sanctions against nations that reject U.S. imperialism, the militarization of police, the prison industrial complex, and its torture and confinement of political prisoners. Can you tell us briefly about any initiates that you're involved in addressing these or other issues?
Well, one that's right now is Black Alliance for Peace. We're launching a campaign because right now the United States deal with Afghanistan, the pull out of Afghanistan with the Taliban, they look like they're getting ready to renege on that and find a way to stay there. So we're actually wanting to raise attention to that. That's one. And the 1033 program, the militarization of the police force in the United States. We're calling for the abolishment of the 1033 program. Obviously, AFRICOM, where U.S. out of Africa shut down AFRICOM campaign is one where the United States has proliferated, sprinkled militarization around the continent of Africa, our motherland. And so there's several things that we're trying to do.
Perfect. I want to thank you, Brother Netfa Freeman, for joining us and giving us your thoughts on the current situation in Haiti.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today and for tuning into NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.